I caught my husband with my perfect daughter-in-law in my own bed on our 25th wedding anniversary. But what I discovered next was 1,000 times worse than the affair. She had a cruel plan that had been in motion for 2 years, and she never expected that my son and I would uncover her real identity and use it to destroy her completely. But what happened when we exposed her at our anniversary party? That's when things got really interesting. This is the story of how a predator infiltrated our family and how we made sure she lost everything. Picture this: a stunning 24-year-old blonde with the kind of beauty that stopped traffic. Isabella Martinez, or so we thought that was her name. She'd been married to my son Michael for 2 years, and I genuinely believed I'd hit the jackpot with this daughter-in-law. But what I didn't know was that every single thing about Isabella was a lie. Her name, her background, even her marriage to my son. And the plan she was executing? It was so twisted, so calculated, that when the truth finally came out, it would make the local evening news. And the revenge my son and I planned? Let's just say Isabella never saw it coming. My name is Sarah, and at 48, I thought I had the perfect life. 25 years married to David, my college sweetheart. A beautiful home in suburban paradise. You know the type: manicured lawn, family photos everywhere, the kind of place where neighbors would slow down just to admire. David worked his corporate job making good money, and I'd built a successful real estate business. After 25 years, we'd found that comfortable rhythm that long marriages settle into. Shared dreams of grandchildren, retirement plans, growing old together. Our son, Michael, 26, was everything we could have hoped for. Successful, kind, still called his dad his best friend. They'd spend weekends working on cars, watching football, talking business. "I hope I'm half the man my father is," Michael would tell Isabella. "He's my hero." If only he'd known what his hero was really doing behind closed doors. And then there was Isabella. For 2 years since Michael's wedding, I'd been living what I thought was my dream. She wasn't just my daughter-in-law. She was the daughter I never had. We went shopping together, shared secrets, planned family dinners. "I hit the jackpot with this one," I would brag to my book club friends. "She's more like my daughter than my daughter-in-law." Isabella played that role to perfection. During the day, she dressed like a Sunday school teacher. Modest dresses, cardigans, minimal makeup. The perfect Christian wife who attended church every Sunday and volunteered at the local food bank. But what I didn't know was that after midnight, Isabella became someone completely different. And what she was doing during those late-night hours would make your skin crawl. You see, Isabella had a routine during those family weekend sleepovers. Around 2 a.m., she'd slip out of Michael's childhood bedroom wearing nothing but black lace panties and a matching bra, claiming she needed water from the kitchen. David, who'd been suffering from insomnia for months, would always be downstairs watching TV. Always alone. Always available for Isabella's innocent late-night encounters. During the day, Isabella was the perfect Christian wife. But those midnight kitchen visits? She made sure David got a full view of what his son had married, and she made sure he knew it was intentional. The way she'd lean over the kitchen counter to reach for a glass, giving him the perfect view. The way she'd accidentally brush against him when she walked past. The way she'd bite her lip and look at him with those blue eyes that seemed to say everything without words. But here's what makes this story even more twisted. Isabella had been planning this seduction since before she even married Michael. What I found out later would make me question everything I thought I knew about trust. I discovered that she'd researched our family for months before she ever met my son. She knew about David's midlife crisis, his insomnia, his vulnerability. She knew about our money, our assets, our retirement accounts. She'd studied us like a predator studies prey. And the most sickening part? She'd documented everything from day one. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this perfect facade started to crack. It began with little things. You know how your gut whispers before it screams? My intuition had been working overtime for weeks, and I was about to find out why. Isabella had been different lately, more secretive with her phone, always angling it away when texting. Those late-night bathroom trips when she stayed over for family weekends were getting longer, sometimes 30, 40 minutes at a time. Then there was David. At 50, he'd suddenly developed an interest in fitness. New cologne that smelled expensive. Humming songs I didn't recognize. Coming home from work with this energy, like he had a secret that made him happy. He'd started working late more often, claiming big projects at the office. But when I'd call to see if he wanted me to save dinner, his secretary would tell me he'd left hours ago. The lies were piling up, but I had no idea how deep they went. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, I told myself. Maybe this is what happens when you're approaching 50. You start seeing problems where there aren't any. My best friend Linda had been dropping hints for months. There's something about that girl, she'd say about Isabella. She's too perfect. Nobody's that sweet all the time. But I'd defended Isabella every time. You're just not used to young people being respectful, I'd tell Linda. She's from a good family. If only I'd known then that everything about her good family was a complete fabrication. But Linda's instincts were about to be proven right in the most devastating way possible. The first real crack in the facade came on a Tuesday in March. I'd forgotten my reading glasses at home and drove back from book club early. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Isabella's white BMW parked down the street. Odd, since Isabella was supposed to be at work, and Michael was on a business trip in Chicago. My hands were already shaking as I put the key in the lock. Something felt wrong. The house felt different when I walked in. There was a smell, expensive perfume mixed with something else, something that made my stomach clench without knowing why. I heard voices from upstairs. Laughter. The kind of intimate laughter that makes you feel like you're intruding on something private. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor as I climbed the stairs. The voices stopped abruptly, and I heard frantic whispering. What I was about to see would change my life forever. I pushed open my bedroom door, and there they were, David and Isabella, in my bed. In the bed I'd shared with my husband for 25 years. Isabella was wearing the red lingerie set I'd given her for Christmas, the expensive La Perla set I'd saved up for, because every new bride deserves something beautiful. For a moment, time stopped. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare. David's face went white as a sheet. But Isabella? She had the audacity to look annoyed, not embarrassed, not guilty, annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. "Sarah!" David scrambled for the sheets, his voice high and panicked. "This isn't... We were just..." But Isabella? She sat up slowly, deliberately, making no effort to cover herself. Her blonde hair was tousled, her lipstick smeared, and she had this look in her eyes, cold, calculating. And then she smiled. Actually smiled. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "We need to talk." The casual way she said it, like we were discussing dinner plans, made my blood run cold. But what came next would haunt me for months. "Get out," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Both of you, get out of my house." But Isabella wasn't done. What she said next would reveal the true monster hiding behind that perfect smile. "You know what, Sarah?" Her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. "I'm actually glad you found out. I'm tired of pretending to like you." I felt like I'd been slapped. Pretending? Did you really think I married your boring son for love? Did you think I actually enjoyed our little shopping trips and coffee dates? God, you're even more pathetic than I thought. David was frantically trying to get dressed, but Isabella wasn't finished destroying me. "This has been going on since my honeymoon, Sarah. While your precious son was sleeping off our wedding night, his father was texting me. And I've been planning this moment for 2 years. My legs gave out. I sank into the chair by my vanity, the same chair where I'd gotten ready for Isabella's wedding, where I'd helped the girl I thought of as a daughter prepare for the happiest day of her life. "Planning what?" I whispered. Isabella's smile turned cruel. "You'll find out soon enough. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep your mouth shut about this, or I'll make sure you lose everything. Your son, your reputation, your precious little life. I have more power than you think." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "I have recordings, Sarah, videos, financial documents, text messages. I've been documenting everything about your pathetic family for 2 years. One word from me, and Michael will think you're a crazy, jealous woman trying to destroy his marriage. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a cheating daughter-in-law. I was dealing with a predator who had been hunting my family from day one. But what I didn't know yet was that Isabella's plan was far worse than just an affair. But Isabella made one crucial mistake that day. She underestimated me, and she had no idea that Michael was about to come home early from his business trip. As David and Isabella gathered their clothes and left my house, Isabella turned back at the bedroom door. "Oh, and Sarah, that expensive perfume you complimented me on last week? David bought it for me, with your credit card." The sound of her laughter echoing through my house was the moment I decided that Isabella had picked the wrong family to destroy. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart like Isabella expected. Instead, I did something that would change everything. I started investigating, and what I found would make the affair look like a minor inconvenience. See, I hadn't built a successful real estate business by being naive. I knew how to read people, how to spot lies, how to dig for information, and if Isabella thought she could threaten me in my own home, she was about to learn exactly who she was dealing with. First, I needed to know exactly what I was up against. How long had this really been going on? What was Isabella's real plan? And most importantly, how could I protect my son from the devastation that was coming? I started with David's credit card statements. I'd always handled our finances, so I had access to everything. What I found made me physically sick. Charges at expensive hotels dating back 8 months, jewelry purchases I'd never seen, a 3,000 Tiffany bracelet, and 500 earrings from Cartier. Regular charges at Victoria's Secret that definitely weren't for me. But the most damning evidence was a recurring monthly payment of $3,000 to something called Sunset Properties LLC. A quick Google search revealed that Sunset Properties managed luxury apartments downtown, the same downtown area where Isabella claimed to work late so often. David wasn't just having an affair. He was maintaining Isabella in a second apartment, with my money. Money from our joint accounts, our retirement savings, our future. But that was just the beginning of what I would discover. And what I found in that apartment would change everything I thought I knew about Isabella. The next day, while David was at work, I drove to the Sunset Properties building. It was one of those modern high-rises with a doorman and valet parking, the kind of place that cost serious money. I told the doorman I was there to see my daughter, Isabella Martinez, in apartment 15B. He smiled and waved me through like he'd seen me 100 times before. The apartment was a revelation. Expensive furniture, designer clothes in the closet, and photos everywhere. But not of Michael. Photos of Isabella with David, looking like a couple on vacation. But the most chilling discovery was Isabella's office. A spare bedroom converted into what looked like a war room. Photos of our family pinned to a bulletin board. Copies of our financial documents. A detailed timeline of our daily routines. And in the center of it all, a notebook titled The Martinez Project, which I would later learn was Isabella's code name for the systematic destruction of our family. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands shaking as I realized the scope of what Isabella had been planning. But I needed more evidence. And I knew exactly where to find it. What I discovered on Isabella's phone would make my blood run cold. I remembered Isabella's phone password. I'd seen her type it dozens of times during our shopping trips. It was Michael's birthday, Eero 426. The irony was sickening. The next afternoon, while Isabella was in the shower at our house, because apparently she'd made herself completely at home, I grabbed her phone. What I found wasn't just affair texts. It was a complete record of manipulation, planning, and something that made my blood run cold. Text to David from 3 weeks ago. Phase 2 is working perfectly. She trusts me completely. By Christmas, we'll have everything we need to disappear. Text to an unknown number. The old lady is so pathetic. She actually thinks I love her son. This is almost too easy. The recordings are perfect. But the most chilling text was to someone named Marcus. Stick to the timeline. We'll have enough evidence to destroy them both when the time comes. The inheritance money will be worth the wait. Inheritance money? What inheritance money? And who was Marcus? My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone as I scrolled through more messages. Isabella wasn't just having an affair. She was documenting everything, recording conversations, taking photos of financial documents, building a case for something much bigger than I'd imagined. Text to Marcus from last month. David signed the life insurance papers. $500K policy with me as beneficiary. Sarah has no idea. My heart stopped. David had changed his life insurance beneficiary to Isabella? When? How? I kept scrolling, and each message was worse than the last. The old man is so easy to manipulate. A few tears about feeling unloved, and he'll do anything I ask. Sarah's real estate business is worth more than we thought. The client list alone could net us 6 figures. Michael is starting to ask questions about my work schedule. Might need to accelerate the timeline. This wasn't about love or lust. This was about money. And Isabella had been systematically gathering evidence to destroy my family and take everything we'd built over 25 years. But the most devastating discovery was yet to come. What I found next still gives me chills to this day. I found a folder on her phone labeled Insurance. Inside were photos of David's medical records, his prescription medications, and something that made my blood freeze. Research on heart attack symptoms, articles about natural causes deaths in men over 50, and a shopping list that included several items that, when combined, could mimic a heart attack. Isabella wasn't just planning to rob us, she was planning to kill David and make it look natural. The room started spinning as I realized the full scope of her plan. She was going to murder my husband, collect the insurance money, and disappear with everything we'd worked for. But she'd made one fatal error in her planning. She'd assumed Michael would stay in Chicago for the full week. He was coming home early, tonight. And what happened when I told him the truth would change both our lives forever. Michael walked into his childhood home at 9 p.m., exhausted from travel, but excited to surprise his wife. He'd cut his business trip short because he missed Isabella, because he wanted to plan something special for their 2nd anniversary. He found me in the kitchen, sitting at the island with a cup of tea, looking like I'd aged 10 years in the 3 days he'd been gone. "Mom? Are you okay? You look—" He stopped mid-sentence, really seeing me for the first time. "What's wrong?" I looked at my son, my baby, my pride and joy, the man who still believed in fairy tales and happy endings, and made the hardest decision of my life. I told him everything. "That's impossible," Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. "Isabella loves me. She loves our family. She would never—" But I showed him the texts, the credit card statements, the photos I'd taken of Isabella's phone and the apartment. Michael's face went through every stage of grief in 30 seconds. Denial. There has to be an explanation. Anger. How could she do this to us? Bargaining. Maybe if we confront her? Depression. How could I be so stupid? And finally, something I'd never seen in my gentle son's eyes before. Cold, calculated rage. "What do we do, Mom?" he asked, his voice steady now. "How do we make them pay for this?" "We don't just make them pay, sweetheart. We make sure they destroy each other. And we make sure the whole world knows exactly who they really are." That night, mother and son sat at the kitchen table until dawn, planning something that would become legendary in our small town. But first, we needed to know exactly who we were dealing with, and what we discovered would shock us to our core. The next morning, I called my friend Janet, who worked for a private investigation firm. Within hours, she'd run a background check on Isabella Martinez that revealed the most shocking truth of all. Isabella Martinez didn't exist. The woman who'd been living in our family for 2 years, the woman my son had married, the woman who'd been systematically planning our destruction. Her real name was Jessica Walsh, and she was already married. Jessica Walsh had been married to Marcus Walsh in Nevada for 3 years. Her marriage to Michael was completely fake, an elaborate con designed to infiltrate and rob a wealthy family. But that wasn't even the worst part. What we learned about Jessica's past would make your blood run cold. Jessica had a criminal record. fraud in California, identity theft in Arizona, and in Nevada, she was wanted for questioning in the suspicious death of an elderly man whose will had been changed to benefit her just weeks before he died of an apparent heart attack. When Michael learned this, I thought he might have a breakdown, but instead, something hardened in him. The boy who'd always seen the best in people was gone, replaced by a man who understood exactly how cruel the world could be. "They want to destroy our family and steal our money," Michael said, his voice eerily calm. "Let's give them exactly what they're asking for." Over the next week, we became master actors. Michael went to work, came home to Isabella, played the loving husband. I continued my routine, smiled at David over breakfast, even complimented Isabella on her beautiful glow. But behind the scenes, we were gathering intelligence like seasoned detectives. And what we discovered would give us everything we needed for the perfect revenge. Michael installed hidden cameras in his own home. I hired Janet's firm to follow David and Isabella 24/7. We documented every lie, every secret meeting, every stolen moment. The evidence we gathered was staggering. David had been siphoning money for 8 months. Not just for the apartment, but for jewelry, trips, even a car he'd bought Isabella that was registered under her fake name. Isabella had been drugging Michael's coffee on the nights she stayed over, using a mild sedative that would make him sleep deeply while she snuck out to meet David. She'd installed spyware on all our phones and computers, monitoring our communications and financial transactions. She'd even been slowly poisoning David with small amounts of digitalis, a heart medication that, in the right doses, could cause a heart attack that would look completely natural. But the most devastating discovery came when we traced the mysterious Marcus from Isabella's texts. Marcus wasn't just Isabella's real husband, he was her partner in crime. They'd been running marriage fraud schemes for years, always targeting families with money and trusting hearts. Their method was always the same. Jessica would seduce and marry a wealthy man's son, gain the family's trust, then systematically rob them while Marcus handled the technical aspects: hacking, document forgery, money laundering. The elderly man in Nevada who died of a heart attack? He'd been their previous victim, and they'd gotten away with over $2 million. We were next on their list. But Jessica and Marcus had made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the intelligence and determination of the family they'd chosen to destroy. And we were about to show them exactly what that mistake would cost them. Michael and I decided to throw a party. A big one. We told David and Isabella it was to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. A renewal of vows ceremony. "I want to show the whole world how blessed we are as a family," I told Isabella, watching her face carefully. "You and Michael, David and me, we're going to renew our commitment to each other in front of everyone we love." Isabella's eyes lit up with what I now recognized as greed, not joy. She saw it as the perfect cover for their final phase, the big score that would let them disappear with everything we'd worked for. We invited everyone. David's colleagues from work, including his boss, Isabella's friends from church, the neighbors, Michael's friends from college, my book club, even David's elderly mother who'd driven down from Portland. For 2 weeks, we planned the perfect party, catered food from the best restaurant in town, professional photographer, even a videographer to capture the special moments. Isabella and David were thrilled. They helped with every detail, never suspecting that they were planning their own public execution. What they didn't know was that Michael and I had prepared a very special surprise for the evening's entertainment. But what happened at that party would become the stuff of local legend. The party was set for Saturday night. 60 guests, open bar, and a presentation that would make local news history. The night before the party, Michael and I sat in the living room, looking at the evidence we'd gathered. Photos, videos, financial records, even Isabella's real criminal background check. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" Michael asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." I looked at my son, thought about the 25 years I'd given David, the love I'd poured into Isabella, the trust that had been shattered so completely. "They made their choice when they decided to destroy our family," I said. "Now they get to live with the consequences." Saturday arrived. The guests started arriving at 6 p.m. David and Isabella were playing their parts perfectly, the loving husband and the devoted daughter-in-law. David wore his best suit and kept his arm around me, playing the devoted husband celebrating 25 years of marriage. Isabella looked stunning in a white dress. The irony wasn't lost on me, playing the perfect daughter-in-law, helping serve guests, laughing at David's jokes. They had no idea they were walking into their own execution. But what happened next would be talked about in our town for years to come. The party was everything I'd promised. Beautiful decorations, amazing food, happy guests mingling in the backyard under string lights. The weather was perfect, the mood was festive, and everyone was having a wonderful time. At 7:30, I noticed Isabella and David exchange a look across the yard, a secret smile that made my stomach turn. They thought they were so clever, carrying on their affair right under everyone's noses. Little did they know, their secret was about to become very public. At 8 p.m., I called for everyone's attention. I stood on the back deck, microphone in hand, looking radiant and happy. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate 25 years of marriage with David and me. You know, when I think about what makes a marriage last, it's trust. It's honesty. It's the belief that the person you love would never, ever betray that sacred bond. The crowd murmured agreement. David was beaming, playing his part perfectly. And I'm so grateful that our family has grown to include our beautiful daughter-in-law, Isabella. She's been such a blessing to our family. Haven't you, sweetheart? Isabella beamed and waved at the crowd. I love this family so much, she called out. They mean everything to me. If only the crowd knew how true that statement was. We meant everything to her bank account. In fact, I continued, Isabella and David have become so close. They spend so much time together. David's been helping her with investments, haven't you, honey? David's smile was starting to look forced, but he nodded. Just family helping family, he said. Well, I said, my voice still sweet, but with an edge that made the hair on people's necks stand up. I thought tonight would be the perfect time to share some of those investments with everyone. I nodded to Michael, who wheeled out a large TV screen we'd rented for the occasion. We've prepared a little slideshow of some recent family memories. But what appeared on that screen would shock everyone to their core. The first image appeared on the screen. David and Isabella kissing passionately in the parking lot of the downtown Marriott. Gasps echoed through the backyard. David went white as a sheet. Isabella's face showed pure panic for the first time since I'd known her. This was taken 3 weeks ago, I announced calmly. While Michael was at work, believing his wife was at her book club. The next slide showed financial records. Bank statements highlighting the $3,000 monthly payments to Sunset Properties. David's been very generous with our retirement savings, I announced, paying for a lovely apartment downtown, for family, of course. More photos appeared in rapid succession. David and Isabella entering the apartment building hand in hand. Isabella wearing jewelry I'd never seen, the Tiffany bracelet, the Cartier earrings. David's credit card statements showing expensive dinners for two at romantic restaurants. Isabella started moving toward the gate, but Michael was already there, blocking her exit. His face was stone cold, and he crossed his arms, making it clear she wasn't going anywhere. But here's my favorite part, I said, my voice now carrying across the silent yard like a judge pronouncing sentence. The screen showed Isabella's real driver's license, her real name, her criminal record from 3 different states. Meet Jessica Walsh, everyone. Married to Marcus Walsh in Nevada 3 years ago. Which makes her marriage to my son. What's the word? Oh yes, fraud. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. David's boss was staring at him like he'd never seen him before. The church ladies were covering their mouths in horror. David tried to speak, but I wasn't finished. Let's hear from Jessica herself, shall we? Isabella's voice filled the backyard through the speakers. The old lady is so pathetic. She actually thinks I love her son. This is almost too easy. Women in the crowd were gasping. Men were shaking their heads in disgust. I could see phones coming out as people started recording. Sarah, please, let me explain, David started. Explain what, David? How you've been stealing from our retirement to fund your affair with a criminal? How you've been lying to our son's face every day? How you helped this woman commit fraud against our family? The photographer I'd hired was capturing every moment. The videographer was recording everything. This wasn't just a private family matter anymore. This was evidence. Isabella finally found her voice. You can't prove any of this. You're just a bitter old woman who can't accept that your husband doesn't love you anymore. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd had in weeks. Oh, sweetheart, I don't need to prove anything. You already did that for me. I nodded to Michael, who held up Isabella's phone. Every text, every plan, every cruel comment about our family, all backed up to the cloud, all admissible in court. But I wasn't done yet. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've seen tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. Jessica Walsh, because that's her real name, has been systematically planning to rob and possibly murder my family. The crowd was dead silent now, hanging on every word. She's been slowly poisoning my husband with heart medication, planning to kill him and collect on a life insurance policy she convinced him to change. She's been drugging my son to keep him unconscious while she carried on her affair. And she's done this before. I gestured to the screen, which now showed newspaper clippings about the suspicious death in Nevada. An elderly man died under mysterious circumstances after changing his will to benefit Jessica. She and her real husband have been running this con for years. Isabella was trapped now, surrounded by 60 people who were looking at her like she was a monster. "You're lying!" she screamed. "This is all lies." "Then explain this," I said. The final image appeared on screen. A photo of the Digitalis pills we'd found hidden in Isabella's purse, along with the research on heart attack symptoms. The crowd was horrified. David's elderly mother was crying. His boss was already on his phone, probably calling the police. But the most satisfying moment was yet to come. Within minutes, the backyard was empty, except for family. Guests fled like the house was on fire, already pulling out their phones to call friends and family with the most shocking gossip our small town had ever seen. David and Isabella stood alone in the middle of the yard, exposed and humiliated beyond repair. "You have 1 hour to get your things and get out of my house," I told David. "The locks will be changed tonight." "Michael, please," Isabella begged, dropping the fake accent I'd just realized she'd been using for 2 years. "You don't understand. I do love you. This was all David's idea." Michael looked at the woman he'd thought was his wife with complete disgust. "My lawyer will be in touch about the annulment," he said quietly. "And the fraud charges." As David and Isabella gathered their things, Michael and I stood together on the deck, watching our family's betrayers slink away into the night. "Think they'll stay together?" Michael asked. "Honey, people like that don't love anyone but themselves. Give it a week." And I was right. What happened next proved that criminals really do turn on each other when the money runs out. I was right. It took exactly 5 days for David and Isabella to turn on each other. When the money dried up, I'd frozen all our accounts within hours of the party. The facade of their great love crumbled faster than a house of cards. David tried calling me, begging for forgiveness, claiming Isabella had seduced him, that he'd been manipulated and threatened. Isabella, meanwhile, was telling anyone who would listen that David had forced her into the affair, that he'd threatened to destroy Michael's career if she didn't comply. The story spread through our town like wildfire. David lost his job within a week. His boss couldn't have someone with such poor judgment representing the company. Isabella was asked to leave her church, her gym, even her favorite coffee shop. Someone had recorded parts of the party on their phone, and clips went viral on local social media. #Renewal of Vows Revenge became a trending topic. The local news picked up the story. "Marriage Renewal Party Exposes Elaborate Fraud Scheme" was the headline that ran for 3 days straight. But the legal consequences were just beginning. The fraud charges against Isabella were very real. Bigamy is a felony, and she'd also committed identity theft by using false documents to marry Michael. My lawyer was able to recover most of the stolen money through asset seizure. The apartment David had been paying for was in Isabella's fake name, making it easy to prove theft. David's divorce lawyer advised him to give me everything I asked for. With the evidence I had, fighting would only make things worse and more expensive. Michael's marriage was annulled within 6 weeks. Since Isabella had been married to someone else the entire time, their marriage had never been legal anyway. But the legal consequences were nothing compared to the social destruction Michael and I had unleashed. David's friends abandoned him. His family was mortified. His elderly mother called me to apologize and tell me she'd cut David out of her will. Isabella's real husband, Marcus, filed for divorce the moment he saw the news coverage. Apparently, he'd thought she was working as a legitimate real estate agent in another state. When he learned about her marriage to Michael and the attempted murder plot, he cooperated fully with police to avoid being charged as an accomplice. The investigation revealed that Marcus had been running online dating scams while Jessica worked her marriage cons. They'd stolen over $3 million from various victims over 5 years. Within 2 months, both David and Isabella had left town. David moved in with a cousin in another state, but even there, the story followed him. Isabella disappeared entirely. Some said she'd moved back to Nevada, others thought she'd fled to Mexico, but the law caught up with her eventually. And when it did, justice was finally served. Michael and I spent months in therapy, working through the betrayal and rebuilding our trust in people. It wasn't easy. When someone you love destroys your faith so completely, it takes time to heal. But our relationship grew stronger than ever. We'd been through hell together and come out the other side united. I threw myself into my real estate business with renewed energy. Word of my intelligence and strength in handling the situation actually brought me new clients. People wanted to work with someone who could handle anything. Michael took time to focus on himself. He traveled, pursued hobbies he'd neglected, and slowly learned to trust his instincts again. A year later, I met Robert, a widowed professor who appreciated my strength and intelligence. He'd heard the story and admired how I'd handled the situation. "You're the kind of woman who doesn't just survive," he told me on our first date. "You thrive." Michael eventually started dating again too. A kind teacher named Emma who knew his story and loved him for his resilience, not despite his past. 2 years later, I received a call from a detective in Nevada. Isabella, Jessica, had been arrested for running the same con on another family. This time, she targeted a wealthy widower and his adult children. The investigation revealed that my family hadn't been Isabella's first victims. She'd been running marriage fraud schemes for years, always targeting families with money and trusting hearts. I testified at Isabella's trial, helping to put her away for 7 years. The judge specifically mentioned my evidence as crucial in establishing the pattern of fraud. "Mrs. Thompson," the judge said, "your courage in exposing this defendant's crimes has likely saved other families from similar devastation." David, meanwhile, had been arrested for embezzlement at his new job. Apparently, once you cross that line of stealing from people you love, it becomes easier to steal from anyone. Michael and I attended Isabella's sentencing. As we watched her being led away in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace. "You know what I learned from all this?" I told the camera crew from the local news station that had followed up on the story. "Evil people count on good people being too polite, too trusting, too nice to fight back. But sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is make sure they face consequences." Their story became legendary in our town, not as a cautionary tale about trust, but as an example of how to handle betrayal with intelligence and strength. "People ask me if I regret trusting Isabella," I said in my final interview. "But I don't regret being the kind of person who loves deeply and trusts completely. I just learned to be smarter about who deserves that trust." Michael added, "My mom taught me that when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when they try to destroy your family, make sure they understand exactly who they're dealing with." 3 years later, Robert and I were married in a small, intimate ceremony. Michael walked me down the aisle, and Emma caught the bouquet. As I danced with my new husband at the reception, surrounded by people who truly loved me, I caught Michael's eye across the room. He raised his glass to me and mouthed, We won. And we had. Not just against David and Isabella, but against the idea that good people have to be victims. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well. It's making sure the people who tried to destroy you face the consequences of their choices. Because here's what I learned, and what I want you to remember. You don't have to be cruel to be strong. You don't have to be vindictive to seek justice. But you absolutely have the right to protect yourself and the people you love from those who would destroy you. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply make sure the truth comes to light. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have handled it differently? Have you ever had to deal with someone who betrayed your trust so completely? If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. Trust your instincts, protect your peace, and never let anyone dim your light.